address that. But I think you did have a fair and useful follow-up question about the sales tax too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's it.
All right. That likes the audio. All right. Welcome to the KRUI cast. An interesting episode. We are recording in my backyard here in Ankeny, Iowa. I'm here with Justin Hollinrake, who's running for a local city council seat with the election being on November 4th, but there may be an earlier primary vote, October 7th, you mentioned?
Yes. So Ankeny does do primaries. If too many candidates file to run, we do end up having a primary. So in a few weeks here, we are going to find out whether or not we will have that or not.
Okay. So I've known you for a few years now. We met door knocking for the Sydney Ankeny campaign back in 2022 for the midterms. You went to Iowa State with a degree in political science. You've worked as a Iowa policy legislator. Is that right? Or not legislator?
Legislative clerk.
Legislative clerk. And for my time as being a journalist in Iowa City and just volunteering around the state, I constantly run into people who like are familiar with you, who've like volunteered with you, worked with you, whether they're Republican or right, or just like independent, involved citizens. Your reach is pretty broad, and it shows you're like pretty involved in the community. Not to hype you up too much or be biased, but um, you know, your passion for civil service and just improving the community is objectively apparent. So you're running for this local city council seat. Can you explain why this seat is important and what its like roles and responsibilities are?
Yeah. So.
Oh.
Yeah, mosquito. But so Ankeny City Council, this is one of the 4-year seats. I can get into the other ones that are up later, but the essential, I'd say, my philosophical perspective is that the city council has an obligation to use resources effectively to make sure the needs of all members of the community are being met. That's how I'd say, like, philosophically, what its duties are. In terms of its powers, the main powers that it has is over planning of infrastructure and housing, just development, and so that affects housing, that affects the environment, that affects affordability, it affects taxes. That's the main stuff. We also get to make decisions around public safety, around how much funding are we allocating to our different departments within the city, and what are we telling them to do? What jobs are we assigning to them? That can vary a bit from community to community. So that's the main. And I would add also just being a voice for the city. Like, this is an area that I'd like to change. I don't think we have a city council that's particularly visible today. Like, I can't remember the last time I saw KCCI is interviewing council member blank to talk about how blank state government law is affecting the city, or how what's going on federally affects the city. Because, well, I do want to keep this mostly local. It just is a fact that a lot of the funding that Ankeny city government, other city governments can get to help our community comes from other levels of government. So when things are getting shook up there, that is going to affect us in some way. I think that our city council has an obligation both to get out there and inform the public about it, but also be out there to try to advocate for the best interests of the city.
I can attest to that. At least the public-facing part. You never really hear about these current members, and also just even it was hard for me to find information about the people running currently outside of you. When you look up Ankeny City Council race 2025, you're the first result, and then everyone else was hard for me to find any information at all. But can you tell me about the current members and what the council, in your estimation, has been falling short on or not giving enough attention to, and what differentiates yourself as a candidate from your current peers and opponents?
Yeah, so I'm not going to give you a deep bio on each of them, but in short, they are all middle-aged homeowners. That's them. That's their MO. I have the slogan there on my website: "New generation of leadership. That's really what I think I bring, both because I am a different generation. I am Gen Z. But I would also say leadership bit because I don't think that our current city council really is taking action to address the fact that Ankeny is a deeply unaffordable community. Oh, okay. And as a young person, I feel that very deeply. I'm very blessed in that I got engaged earlier this year, and me and the love of my life, we see in this community what my parents saw in it, what people have seen in it for generations now, is a community with immense opportunity. Community that has great schools, great infrastructure, great job opportunities. The challenge is that back when my parents came here, initially in the late 80s, renting, and then eventually got our home shortly before I was born in the early 2000s. Back then, you could afford a place to live. Now you can't. Now, I've looked on Zillow, an empty half-acre lot is running $250,000 now. And rent for even the smallest apartments is around at least $1,000 a month, and quite a bit more. I know so many people that I've gone to school with, that I've worked with, that even if they work here in Ankeny, and everyone they love and care about is here in Ankeny, they don't live here. They move somewhere else. Even other suburbs throughout the metro, not even Des Moines, because even over there, they are more affordable than Ankeny, because they have just made better decisions than us. Mm-hmm. And I think that really goes to show in the housing angle with the zoning around what our city allows to be built and where, but also in that there's a lot of resources out there from other levels of government to help support the construction of homes that are affordable of all different housing types that Ankeny just doesn't make use of today for the most part. Mm. And I am very much on the opposite side of that, this current city council, because they are the ones who voted to have this plan, to stick with this plan, and to keep going with this plan. And this is what inspired me to run, was that there's what's called the comprehensive plan, and any city of any size will have it. Mm-hmm. And Ankeny's is Ankeny 2040. How is the city going to grow all the way out to 2040? And in my view of it, it's a plan to continue to make Ankeny a more and more expensive place to live. Mm-hmm. And I just think that is the fundamentally wrong direction to take our city. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the biggest difference between us.
Mm-hmm. Is your approach to housing? We can continue down that point. We'll mention your other platform ideas. So the current city council is making a conscious effort to reject funds to pursue an intentionally low density, car dependent, single family home style development.
Large single family home, I would add. They do not. The current zoning code is very restrictive, even if you wanted to build a starter home. Mm-hmm. It's very restrictive of that, even.
Mm-hmm. How does walkability and density and alternative modes of transportation play into your vision for Ankeny?
I would say it's very important. Just to define these terms in case anyone doesn't know. So walkability and density is, and sorry, what was the third?
Alternative modes of transportation, biking, the bus systems. Yeah.
So the point is that when you look at other communities, both throughout the metro, throughout the state, throughout the country, throughout the world even, you'll see that they are laid out very differently. Mm-hmm. So I was lucky that when I was going to Centennial High School, proud to graduate from there, I got to go on our exchange trip that we get to have, and so I went to France and I got to see how cities are laid out there. Just this last year, I decided to go for Ireland for St. Patrick's Day, my only international vacation ever. That was a very good time. And I got to see how the layout was different in the city. And I also got to experience it when I went to college, when I went to Iowa State. And I've seen people talk about online about, why does college feel so different? Why is the college experience so different? Well, the reason was because, for me, I could just walk out the front steps of I could walk out of my dorm room and within 10 minutes be in my classroom. with my own 2 feet, and even faster with the bus. And so that just made it feel very, very different, because even though I did have a car and I had my car's parking space, I only ever used that to drive from my dorm to my house and vice versa. I got to live my life in a way where I could just use my 2 feet to get around, which is a lot healthier since you're getting that exercise in, but also it has a lot of benefits for the city.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk first about the budget, because the biggest expense for the Ankeny City budget and most city budgets is the capital expenditure. And the vast majority of that is maintenance on existing roads and expansion of existing roads,
mm-hmm.
as well as the water system and sewage system maintenance for them. And I mean, every single time a vehicle goes, that's a little bit of wear and tear. It's a little bit more maintenance you're going to have to do. This is why the bus system exists in large part, well, for many reasons. But one of the reasons it exists is to help cut down on that. And also look at this from the traffic angle, right? Every single person who's on the bus, or every single person who's on the bike trail, or every single person who's on their 2 feet, getting from where they are to where they need to be, is one less person on the road in their car blocking you from getting to where you need to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't work in Ankeny. I commute to work every single day, and I'm fortunate in that my work gives me a little bit of flexibility, because the few times I have had to leave right at 5, it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. I mean, a couple days ago, I was almost involved in a crash on the interstate. I've had standstill traffic, and I mean, here in Ankeny, people talk about all the time. I saw there's like a joke shirt that my family actually bought from me of George Washington didn't have to cross our Delaware, because Delaware is just so clogged with traffic, and so is Ore Labor, and those roads aren't going to get any wider. They're not. We've run out of space. They are the widest they will be, and traffic is just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse, unless and until you give people a reasonable alternative.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it plays a big part, and the city. Can I get into the bike trails now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So one of the really big missed opportunities is that we have one bike trail. It's called the High Trestle Trail. People love it. Some of my favorite childhood memories are on there, and it is really important for recreation, because even in the summer when it's blazing hot, people will still exercise and get out on the trail because they're in the shade, they're protected. This is why other suburbs throughout the Des Moines metro, almost all of them in their comprehensive plans have, here's the trail map. As we build, we will put in trails, here's what we'll do. And Ankeny, in a way, kind of gets it, because we are doing a lot of great upgrades to the High Trestle Trail. They're adding like a shiny path thing, they put the bridge, they put tunnels underneath the major roads. That's great. What's really frustrating to me is that, unlike all the other suburbs, we have not, and if we continue down this current path, we'll never add another one. That comprehensive plan has no plan of, okay, in new development, here's where the trails will go. It costs very little. You can fundraise to cover pretty much all of it. It's just a matter of will. The city has chosen not to. And I think that it's a big problem for health, for recreation, for transportation, also accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
I think about my grandma, who's going to turn 90 soon and doesn't like to drive pretty much anywhere. I think about some of the seniors that would have come in when I used to work at Viridian. One of them hit someone in the parking lot with their car, but they're still driving. Why are they still driving? Because people rightfully understand that taking the keys takes away someone's freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Because with how our communities are laid out today, if you take away that ability to drive, your ability to be an independent person is gone.
Freedom is tied to car ownership.
Exactly. But it doesn't have to be. And this is what I think a lot of people miss when they talk about, well, why did all the seniors go to Florida? It's not just the weather. Like, Arizona is the weather too. And there are, people that are very attached to their homes and their loved ones and their communities here in Iowa. But they still go to Florida anyway. Why? Because over there, they will build communities that cater to the needs of people who can't drive. You can actually walk or ride the bus or even now ride trains to get to where you need to go. And you can do that in college, and that's why it feels so different. But even though Ankeny's getting older, we know there's ever increasing demand for senior housing because, I mean, the country's getting older too, and the state. We aren't meeting that need for that population. So much so that people are being forced to leave. People of all ages, but I think of particular, there's a gentleman, his name is Gary. He's in his 80s, he's a Navy vet. Him and his wife had the plan that so many senior citizens have of, well, we're just going to stay in our house till we die because we're scared of nursing homes. Which, I mean, fair, they are horrifying. But the problem was that because of certain circumstances, they couldn't stay in the home anymore. Well, they couldn't find a place for themselves here in Ankeny. And so, even though they've lived here for longer than I've been alive, and everyone they love is here, and their community is here, they were forced to leave our community because there wasn't a space for them. You know, I've talked with other people that are senior rights activists, and this conversation we've had, and that, like, yeah, for senior citizens, which is ever more of our population, having this accessibility, it's an accessibility thing and a personal independence and freedom thing to actually be able to live your life without being able to drive a car, because we all lose that at some point, and we have years of our lives, decades of our lives, even after our point, after that point. And so I think it would be better for seniors and young people both to make that change. I think it would be great for the kids to give them some independence, so they can actually like get around independently and safely, and the parents can like not have to be worried to death about their kid not being in the house. I just think it's a much healthier way, much more sustainable way too, fiscally, to build your community.
I mean, just to build off that, you mentioned like young people and their ability to be mobile. The biggest thing you hear from young people here is like how they have to own a car as early as they can, 14, just to get to school. In my when I was in Centennial, there was a rush as soon as the exit bell rang to get to the parking lot. The kids always were running. If any adults are interested, you can go watch. You can watch Centennial High. The students run to their car at 3:45 exactly to get out of the parking lot, and there's usually a crash every day, or almost every day, and there's that rush because of the traffic, and it's just, and every student is expected almost at this point to have a car just to get around, and not only that, walkability, like you said, fiscally bleeds into almost every issue of sustainability and fiscal responsibility. I think at the high extreme, cities like Houston that are very car dependent, like 40 or 45% of their land is dedicated to parking lots and roads. And like you mentioned, the health effects of car dependency, people not walking, not having the community, the feel of things being dense. Here in Uptown where we are, small centers that are mildly walkable, like the district or Uptown, are seen as like not only economic engines of a city, but community pillars. You have things like the farmers market. There's art festivals there. The elderly love this area because they can walk to like local businesses. That's just areas like that are sought after. Young people use their cars here in Ankeny to drive to walkable areas in Des Moines or West Des Moines or Merle Hay to get that walkable experience and spend their money in those areas. And like you said, the cost of maintaining roads and all that infrastructure is not faced up front, but later they have to spend money on that because it's not taken by the developer. I guess this bleeds into another one of your big three on your campaign website, which is property taxes. Recently in 2023, the state legislature, in an attempt to remove a lot of budgeting autonomy from local governments, capped how much, from my understanding, how much property taxes can increase year on year, on top of a flat limitation on income taxes. And so these limitations on how local governments can collect revenue has given them a tunnel vision on rising property values, to increase property taxes, and that's been leading to gentrification, a real emphasis on high-value single-family homes that is pricing people out of the city and making it harder to just exist and live. Um, your plan, as far as I understand, is to address these out-of-control property taxes. Ankeny just rejected a recent 1% sales tax increase. I'm interested if is a proposal like that something you're interested in, and what other alternative modes of revenue generation are you thinking about to replace that lost revenue from property taxes?
So you are correct that they did restrict our property, our ability to raise more property taxes. The good news is that um, they were successfully lobbied into not not essentially penalizing new growth, because my understanding is that essentially how it works is that excluding new growth, your total property tax levy may rise by blank percent per year, which, by the way, if you get hit with an inflation spike, it will rise, but not enough to match inflation. So, God forbid, we have a case of inflation. In that case, the budget would just be eaten alive. It would just be chopped down. So that could be really bad.
I mean, cities already experiencing this, are experiencing the effects of their limited budget. Des Moines and the metropolitan area is having to cut services like DART and Bravo or other programs, and are being incentivized to redirect a lot of their programs like Habitat for Humanity or Invest DSM, which were previously targeted toward providing affordable homes, providing services for the poor. Um, those organizations are now being incentivized and told to invest in neighborhood revitalization and beautification. So resources previously dedicated toward, let's say, building a home from scratch that's affordable, are now being dedicated to building community gardens or beautifying existing wealthy neighborhoods to increase property values, because that is the only way these areas are able to address their budget crises. So like that, what you're saying is already being experienced. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what I really don't want is I don't want Ankeny to end up in Des Moines' situation, because essentially right now we are making the decisions that Des Moines was making or had been making since before I was born, because they similarly tried to do let's just sprawl out and land grab and let's just live off the proceeds of that, because you get that temporary hit from it, right? Because there's the first few years of there's this new property, it's paying property taxes, the developer paid to put in all the infrastructure, so it's essentially free money for the city budget. But now, however many years later, we need maintenance. Well, if it's a very low density area, and especially in Ankeny with a relatively low property tax rate, those properties may not actually be able to pay for their own maintenance with the property taxes they're paying. Meaning, either you have nothing but bad decisions at that point, or just painful ones of cut services and infrastructure, or raise taxes. And that's why Des Moines is now in the position of having to make some very uncomfortable, very painful decisions. And so I don't want us to get to that point. And I'm critical of what I think is kind of the standard route of trying to improve the city's budgets. Of where you're talking about, let's just try to juice the property value. Let's artificially inflate it beyond where it should be to get more property tax revenue. Well, the physical house isn't paying you taxes. The person living in it is. And just because you've juiced up the value of that home does not mean the person actually has more income to pay those taxes with. And this is where people get priced out of their homes by that knock-on effect. And I really don't think that the strategy long-term of how do we raise the fiscal strength and get the budget our city needs to pay for what we need for should be, let's somewhat sneakily raise people's taxes. Because that is, in my opinion, what the current city council is effectively doing. They are slightly cutting the nominal tax rate, the property tax levy. They've slightly cut it over the last several years, but people's property tax bills continue to go up because the decisions they've made have constrained the supply of housing so much that it's being artificially inflated, which is, I would say, the biggest issue for people who need to find a home to live in, right? But also then has this knock-on negative effect of, if you already own a home or commercial property, now you're being hit with a higher tax levy than I think you reasonably should be, because it's ultimately coming back to, we're not spending money efficiently. We're spending money in a wasteful way. And I think you're very right in that it's problematic of how we're seeing DART be really threatened with a very deep and, I would say, potentially lethal blow. Because if I can get into DART a little bit now, the situation essentially is Ankeny and the other suburbs of the metro pay in a majority of the money, but a majority of the riders are in Des Moines. And so the suburbs are not happy about them. They're like, cater to our needs. We want more of our people riding. But the issue becomes, well, you're trying to have your cake and eat it too, because if you want people to ride the bus, it needs to be within a walkable distance from their home. Like, you will occasionally get the odd person, like my neighbor, awesome guy, but bit, unusual in that he was willing to drive to the bus stop, park there, park and ride, and then ride it down to Des Moines. The overwhelming majority of people are just going to drive right by that bus stop and drive to work, right? But if you don't want rush hour traffic to be as awful, or really at this point outside of rush hour too, what you really should want is more people to be able to ride the bus. And if you want to be a community that is accessible to people, whether they be elderly or disabled or low income and can't afford a car, if you want it to actually be accessible to them and actually be meeting their needs, then you need to have housing of a decent concentration with a bus stop nearby. And Ankeny today does not follow that approach. Ankeny's approach today is, we're going to take the apartment, we're just going to shove it, the few apartments we allow, we're going to shove it away in a corner somewhere. We're going to shove it between the most traffic-heavy road in town, Delaware, and then the interstate on the other side. I don't think that is the correct way to do that, no matter what angle you're looking at it from. I think that DART is important for our community. I think that it's a vital way of meeting people's needs. And I think that if the city wants to get serious about getting more ridership, and it should change its development plan to say, okay, new developments, especially those that are geared towards those of moderate to lower income, which we desperately need, we should have bus stops built into that as the plan. And also, we need to actually have bus stops connect to our, walkable areas. Uptown has a bus connection. The district does not, even though a bus goes right there to DMAC. That, to me, does not make sense. So I would very much want to see a change there.
I think Ankeny's developmental history and growth pattern plays a little bit of a role in contextualizing this. You mentioned in our, when we were talking earlier, that the city's kind of addicted to this cheap burst of growth, that where it doesn't have to pay the upfront costs, but those are coming later down the line because of their lax laissez-faire and kind of lazy planning. Can you build a little bit more on that? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So when I was born, Ankeny had about 20,000 people. Now Ankeny has about 80,000 people. And so we legitimately had years in the city's history where 1 out of 9 people had moved into the city in the prior year. When I was in high school, we had an all-time peak of, we had a little over 4,000 people move in a single year. We've dropped down to around 2.5 now. But to get back to that percentage rate of growth, we would need to start adding around 8,000 people a year. Not going to happen. And not that I would try to make it happen, but even if I tried, it couldn't happen. And so we need to be realistic here and understand that while yes, new growth is important, and we should always strive to have some. This is one of the main reasons I decided to run for this office. Is I checked out that comprehensive plan, Ankeny 2040, and I saw that the plan at this point over the next 15 years is to make these same mistakes and essentially make them permanent. Because we have about 10 to 15 years where what's going to happen currently, the plan is we're going to land grab east of the interstate all the way to Bondurant until we run into Bondurant, who's also land grabbing to race our direction. And that's it. And there doesn't seem to me to be a lot of thought put into, well, once we hit that, we've hit about our maximum geographical growth at that point, because we'll be relatively boxed in, and we'll be very spread out. Then what? Can our city actually pay our bills at that point? Do the properties that we have in the city have the ability to pay for their own maintenance at the property tax rate that exists today? Because at that point, if the answer is no, you have nothing but painful decisions of, we're going to cut infrastructure and services. People don't want to have potholes in their roads. They don't want 911 to be slow to respond when they have an emergency. But then also, people don't want to have their property taxes raised, and with the state law, you also probably can't do that. So then, essentially, you are in Des Moines' position of nothing but painful, uncomfortable decisions. And I really don't want us to put ourselves in that box permanently. So, yeah.
Is this an active contention in the current membership? The tension between land grab, or it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, a competition over land expansion between the neighboring cities?
Oh, absolutely.
And building smart density. Is that a contention right now? Like which to focus on? Is do we expand outward or build inward, densely and smartly?
So I would, from what I've seen, which granted I'm not as knowledgeable about other communities as I am about Ankeny, the communities that are boxed in understand that they need to focus on sustainability. So like Windsor Heights, Urbandale, they get it because they've been forced to, right? It's like, well, what else can we do at this point? But other communities that are on the edge and still have land that they can get to, like Ankeny, like Bondurant, Altoona, Waukee. To me, it seems like the focus is just, how do we just get to the land before someone else does? And I think that Ankeny needs to grow up, just like how I've grown up and the city has grown up over my lifetime. We need to grow up with our mindset of, it's not just about grabbing land anymore. It's not just about expanding before someone else gets to it. It's about making sure that long term, this is a city that can pay for itself and can meet the needs of the people who live in it. And so I'm hopeful that other cities will also go that direction, because we can strengthen each other in some ways by doing that. But I really, really don't want my community to make this mistake and put ourselves down this road permanently.
I'm more familiar with the district than I am the recent Ankeny Boulevard renovations. But are those two projects moves in the positive direction in your view, or are there problems with those two? Do you have criticisms of them?
So I'll start with Ankeny Boulevard because that's a bit more simple. That's technically a state highway, so they're paying to do that. They're choosing to do that. It is one of the major road arteries, so I do think it's kind of necessary up there, especially because it's right next to the school, and there's such traffic problems by the school, and also that's where the football games are. So I know that that's a nightmare. I would say, so I guess general philosophy from me, like we're always gonna have cars. Like, we're not, the communities that are already built today are as they are. It would be very hard to try to fundamentally change their character, and I don't think that that's what the city should be focused on. I think the city should be focused on future growth, being better and smarter. And if there's other level, as a general philosophy, if other levels of government are willing to give us money to do good things for our people, I want that. The district, I have mixed feelings on, because on the one hand, it is doing something very valuable of giving like a place where things happen, right? Like that's where they try to have concerts and festivals and like businesses, and it's built as a walkable area, as like an attraction, right? But the part that's so frustrating to me is that people don't really experience it that way, because almost everyone in Ankeny drives to get there, because there's very little housing in that area, and very little affordable housing too. Like there's a new ultra luxury apartment called the Collier just across the street, where I think the cheapest unit sells for like 300K.
Yeah.
Which is like, don't get me wrong, we need some of that, but to me it was very frustrating to see there's all these businesses and there's this entire area built up around being walkable, but there's not apartments above the businesses on the second or third level. Like here in the uptown area, some of these businesses have apartments above them. A couple of them do. And like if you really want to stimulate the local economy, to support small businesses, and also to help provide the workers, provide the employment so the businesses can actually employ someone that can afford it, well, to give businesses workers that they can afford to pay, you need to give the workers an affordable place to live on that wage. If you don't have that, you're going to force all your goods and services to be more expensive. You're going to lose out on certain jobs you could have had. You're going to lose out on certain residents you could have had. And I think that's the wrong decision to make. So unfortunately, the buildings are already built, so you can't really add the housing on top of it now. I would question whether or not the parking lot for the library needs to be as large as it is. So I think that's something to consider. But I think also, when we're talking about the District 2.0, for lack of a better term, because we're going to have all this growth east of the interstate, right? Right now there's very little out there. I think there's like maybe 500 people living east of the interstate today in those homes. But once again, the plan, that comprehensive plan, is 36th Street to Or Labor going east for like 4 miles. All of it. Take all of that. Land grab. And so there will need to be some commercial hub over there. And I think what we could do is we could take the lessons we've learned from the district and recognize that we really should do mixed use. We really, really, really should create that thriving opportunity for the local economy, for small businesses, and have the housing and the commercial be right next to each other, have the city be less overbearing and controlling it, because in the zoning, from what I saw, the city like literally created a special zoning code just for the district so that they could like micromanage it. I think we'd be much better off if the city was much more hands off in terms of deciding exactly what went where, and just said, okay, this is our more pedestrian oriented, mixed use, like different feeling space, and we'll reach out to the state government, the feds, the county government, see what support we can get for this development and for the housing there. But we're going to let it be this different style for meeting people's needs and for meeting our budgetary needs. And that's what I would really like to see happen with that area of development.
I think the third and final big issue you stated as like the big three is mental health, the mental health crisis. I guess I'll let you take the lead on that and describe it.
Yeah. So, statistically, almost everyone either has had a mental health struggle, knows someone who has had a mental health struggle, or will know someone who has. It's just a very common thing in society. I know people have had those struggles. Most of them live in Ankeny, and I'm going to give you an anecdote and a statistic. So, statistically, our city does a community survey. It goes out once every 3 years. The last one came in last year. And In that, one of the questions is, what is Ankeny missing? What do we need to work on? And one of the things that's in there is mental health. That people really, really feel like there's just not enough options out there. There's not enough access to it, and that's not unique to Ankeny. That's a statewide, nationwide problem. In my previous work, I've talked to voters in countless communities that have mentioned this as a struggle for them and their families. And yeah, it's just there. It's in the numbers. Anecdotally, trigger warning to people, self-harm. We have had some very disturbing public suicides in Ankeny. I think it was around 7 years ago. A young woman walked onto what was my elementary school, Westwood, and hung herself off the playset while kids were at the school. Last year, we had a gentleman shoot himself in front of his business. A couple years ago, there was a guy who took a BB gun and tried to fake rob a store, and then when the police showed up, he had taken off the tip of the thing that shows that it's a BB gun. Just walked up, pointed at the officer, and then the officer responded with lethal force. We've had some very bad mental health incidences, and we've had that. Those are the public ones. There's even more that don't get in the news, and so it really is a big problem for Ankeny. And what's frustrating to me is other communities have taken action on this. So Urbandale was one of the first ones. They have what's called their crisis intervention team, and very simply, that's just they have one lady who's a licensed mental health specialist. That's their thing. She has a police officer who's an escort to her, excuse me, who's also a bit extra trained. And when there are situations where, it's not a law enforcement issue, no one's in danger, but clearly someone's in crisis, the mental health specialist goes and talks to the person, police officer hangs back just in case anything escalates, and then they get connected with what resources are available. Des Moines recently started doing a similar thing. I talked with a friend of mine who works for Des Moines PD, and he talked all about how they have what's called the crisis intervention team. And so those people aren't city employees, but it works a similar way of, it's not a law enforcement issue, but someone needs to go talk to someone, call the mobile crisis team. They'll go figure out what the person's problem is with the police escort, and then from there, it frees up more police officers to actually do law enforcement, because that way you only need to have one there instead of 3. But also the person in question actually gets helped. And so I really wish Ankeny would do that. We have half done it, because we have what's called the community engagement team on our police force. So they do get a bit of extra training, and they are the preferred people to send to these calls. But there's only 3 of them. And once again, they are first and foremost police officers. I think if we were to add the other half of the equation of a mental health specialist or a social worker, or someone who actually has the training to deal with people in crisis that's not a law enforcement problem, and were to pair them up with that team, we could do a lot of good helping a lot of people, and it would honestly be it would probably save resources too, because now the police can actually do police work instead of dealing with this. And yeah, I've spoken with people that have had mental health crises and have had, just our Ankeny PD come and try to deal with it. And, no flack to the PD. They're all respectful, they're empathetic, they do their best, but it's just not what they are trained to do. And I think the city absolutely should do it. I think we could find the funding to do it. It's something I would like to do. Yeah.
Schools are a huge part of our city's not only economy but reputation. That's why people move here. It's not necessarily under, from what I understand, the responsibility of the city council, but I believe you mentioned there are ways we can improve mental health services in our schools. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So mental health is something that affects people of all ages, but it is particularly common among adolescents. And by helping to find these problems earlier in life, we can help people heal sooner, save them the trauma, and also save our emergency services of having to take those calls later on in life. And so I was thinking about that. I was trying to figure out, like, okay, but what can we do here, right? Because you're right. Typically, the schools are just the school district's problem. Like, that's not an us thing. But there actually is an area where the schools in the city already work together, and they're called our school resource officers. They are, Ankeny PD police officers, but their work, their 9 to 5, is in the schools. We had them when I was in school. We've had them for a very long time, I think. And both the city and the school district chip in some of the funding. And so my thought was, well, if we're doing that because we've identified public safety as a priority for the kids, and now we're identifying mental health as a priority for the kids, why not do a similar thing? And so I've chatted with a lot of people that work in our schools, whether it be our teachers or some of our support staff. I've chatted with our school board, and unfortunately, the gap that exists today is getting into the system and getting the kid in there, because Ankeny schools does have some social workers, and so they do have some kids that are troubled that get referred on to them. But the gap that exists is that they don't work inside of the school. They don't like have an office there, right? They're called in and connected to the kid after the fact. So when there is a moment of crisis happening in our schools, it's just down to like a academic counselor or a teacher to just be like, well, I'm an adult, I'll do my best. And they do get some background training on that, but once again, that's not their specialty. That's not their job. It's just someone has to do it, so it's been foisted upon them. I think it would be much better if our schools had those point people who had specialized training in mental health and dealing with kids, and that's what they do. And our school district and city came together to have that, because also I remember from my time in school, which was a bit ago, but not terribly long ago, that there were a lot of students that felt like they didn't know where to turn. Like, I was in show choir, and so I was a show choir kid, and so a lot of them are just trauma dumping on their choir teachers. Mm-hmm. But like, I remember one was like, what they said, and so I'm not sure if it's true, but certainly how they felt. It's like, well, if I go to the counselor, it's just going to check that I haven't cut my wrists, and so long as I haven't, they're just going to shrug at me and be like, well, that's how students felt. Mm-hmm. And once again, I want to blame the counselors, because that's not their thing. That's not their job. They have each like over 200 students that they're responsible for academically. Like, also asking them to be the mental health person for those people is not, it just doesn't work in my opinion. And so that's where I want to come together with the schools. I want to achieve that. And so related to that, I want to talk about how we're going to pay for it, because that's the very fair question to ask of, well, employing people is expensive. How do you pay for it? What I want is to create I want to create for Ankeny the mental health fund. Other cities have housing funds, and it's a fund. You solicit donations, and then from that money you use it to spend addressing a need. There's a very deep history of philanthropy in Ankeny. I mean, just look at the posters of any of our high school teams. Like I was also on the basketball team, so I saw this. Like, there are so many businesses, organizations, religious groups, even just individuals who want to give money to do good in this community. And once again, there's so many that recognize mental health as a problem, but they don't know where to start to address it, right? Mm-hmm. There's nowhere of donate your money here to address mental health in Ankeny. We could create it. And if we created that, I think that we very much could afford to, pay for these staff to do this work. And I think we could even get over time, if we grow it over time. My personal preference would be to like put in bonds or something and use the interest to pay for it, grow it over time. I think it could become a pillar of the community to then help expand other services. And I will touch on briefly the other services that are out there, because I do think that one of the challenges we have is that even if you want to get help, and just asking to get help is really hard. But even if you ask to get help or look up online, like, where do I get help? It's not easy to find. Easy to figure out, okay, here's exactly where I plug into it, right? And so that's where I think the city can play a very important role in being that connecting piece. Because I have a neighbor who works at the Clive Behavioral Health, which is essentially the mental health clinic / hospital that exists in Clive. And I was chatting with her, and she told me something very impactful, which is that in that space, or in that place, they have never run out of beds and spaces to help people who are suffering from anxiety, depression, or self-harm. They have never run out of space for those individuals. People that are undergoing psychosis or something severe like that, they run out of beds for them sometimes. But when our emergency services are interacting with people that have, suicidal ideation, that have deep depression that's manifesting to the point of a 911 call, we could be sending them there to get help, because they will take anyone regardless of income and then regardless of ability to pay. But I was like, do you get anyone from Ankeny? Not really. And I've spoken to people, once again, who I know have either themselves or know someone who has had incidences where 911 has gotten called. They don't get taken there. They don't get informed of that. And I think that's because, like, just look at the city's website, mental health, it's very incomplete. It's very incomplete. I don't think anyone has really bothered to get together all the resources. And so one of the first things I would want to do if I do get elected is next year, I want to call a panel of all the mental health service providers in the metro, and try to get the other local governments in on it too, and be like, hey, let's just get this straightened out. Like, what actually is the system? Where are the gaps? Where is their capacity right now? And let's sort this out. Because right now, no one really knows for sure. And there's not, to me at least from Ankeny, any active effort to try to help sort that out. So that's my ideas with mental health.
Mm-hmm. I think we're close to an hour almost, so maybe we can wrap it up soon. I have one more question. Well, it's more vague, and I guess like about the state as a whole. Ankeny, like the rest of the state, is a stereotyped as conservative, or at least Republican.
Yeah.
But at least until like 2014, we voted for Obama. I believe in both elections. We who was it? It was Thomas Harkin. Similar
Tom Harkin.
Tom Harkin. There was large support for Bernie Sanders in the state. Mm-hmm. What is your message to people who are skeptical of either your campaign, or what do you think people in your position have to offer to those skeptical voters?
Yeah. So I would say that, because this is one of the questions I had earlier this year too, because like I said, I've worked campaigns, I've worked politics, and I also took last year pretty hard, because there's a lot of people I know that are immigrants, a lot of people I know that are vulnerable, and so it did feel like hard for me to try to figure out, like, yeah, what do I do with this now, right? Like, what do I do with this? Is this what my home is? Is this what my community is? And I would say to people that are also feeling how I was, of like, I mean, can we even win a fight anymore? Is it even worth fighting anymore? What do we even get out of it? Is that I think that this level is where you can make the most individual impact. Because like we talked about my history, like right out of college, I jumped all the way to Congress, right? Like I'm helping on a congressional campaign because that's what I chose to do. But I have come to realize that I really think this level we can make the most difference. A lot of people don't realize how much power there is here, and like, do you know what the Ankeny City budget is this year? You got a rough ballpark on it?
No idea.
Take a stab at it.
20 million.
200 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just around $200 million, and so when you look at that and you think about, okay, even if you're taking those resources or fundraising the resources, but if it's just a fraction of 1% that you put towards mental health, that's a huge, huge difference for a community. If you talk about, housing, the decisions that your city council makes very much could decide whether or not you can even stay in your community. That's what it is for me. Because, like, for me personally, trying to find a place for me and my fiance to live and to plant roots and to hopefully start a family, like, whether or not our city starts going down the right path or not may affect whether or not I'm even able to do it. Even if I want to stay here, I'm simply I should have mentioned this earlier, like one of the biggest differences between me and everyone else, dude, they have way more money than me. I do not make a lot of money. Like, I am not quite entry level, but like I am like one promotion maybe is what you would put it. Is what I have. I would by far be the poorest person on that city council and one of the poorer people in the city. And I think that if we really believe in making the world a better place and making our communities a better place, this is where you start it. And also, I would say, like, keep in mind that for an election like this, your involvement matters so much. Like, the number of people who voted in 2023 in Ankeny's elections versus 2024 was like a quarter. Like, it is very low turnout. So you bothering to show up and vote, but then also even like going out and talking to people who are just like-minded, just like you, have the same priorities and values for the community, and helping them to understand, number one, election's happening. A lot of people know that. But also, here's what's at stake. You can single-handedly make a big difference on that election, which then makes a big difference on your community. And then from there, we can build more and more and more and more. Because, like I said, being a voice for the community, if I'm successful and I'm able to get on there and convince the majority to take action on these things, then we can carry that up the ladder and go to the state government and be like, look at what we've done. Look at what we've done on affordability. Look at what we've done on mental health. And you have so much more money and power than us. How about you even just match what we've done? Then you can make that argument. Then you can build up that political movement to make, our communities better. I think that and in doing that is a much healthier and effective way to try to make a difference in the world than I'm just going to go all out for the presidential. Like, I'm going to fly out to Pennsylvania and I'm going to knock doors. Like, I think this is the much better way to do it, and I think there's a real opportunity here. So that would be my pitch to people.
What's the best way for people to contact you, and are there any upcoming events you'd like to shout out?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me. Justin Hollinrake for Ankeny City Council is my social media handles. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We'll see if I have more. Hollinrake for Ankeny is my website. You can learn more about me there. I also have on there my email address, so just go ahead and send me an email, but it's also just hollinrakeforankeny@gmail.com. Encourage people to reach out to me there. And not just not only if you want to get involved in the campaign and help out, I'd love that, but also just like if you have any questions or any suggestions or any other issues you want to talk about, like as someone asked me a question about water and what are we going to do about water, and things like that, just reach out. I'm happy to have a conversation. Email, phone, in person, you name it. I really do want to be a representative of the people, because I guess that is one of the other differences that I see among myself and current city council, is that I don't see them active in the community, out there talking to people, listening to them, meeting with people. I just don't see that, and I don't want that to be how it is anymore. I want us to really be putting in the work to hear what everyday people have to say.
Justin, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
There you go. I guess that's it.
How long was it?
Yeah. All right. Is that good? Oh,
I think